Hello, lovely people, and thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. And today I have got the most exciting guest I have had so far. I know so little about this woman, but she has achieved something that I would have thought impossible this year in the short space of time of 2022. We're recording this right at the end of the summer. So you might hear this in a year's time and you'll absolutely know about this. But this lady is just an inspiration to me. So I want to introduce you to Katherine MacBean. If you Google her, I don't think you'll find very much, will you, Katherine?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
I
I've never done anything particularly exciting one way or the other.
Oh, what you're doing now is very exciting. So, first of all, I'd like to say a massive welcome. Thank you so much for coming on in your extremely frantic life. And I just want to tell our audience a little bit about you. I'm not going to tell them what you've done yet because it's just too exciting and we'll just hold that a bit longer. But, but can you give us a bit about your background? How you woke up. So your telegram is eyes open MacBean, because your eyes were opened many years ago when you were in the food industry. So can you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I always, even since school, I had an issue with authority. I didn't like it if I saw things that I felt were unjust or people being bullied by those much bigger than them. So from a young age, I had this need to see balance and fairness and justice. And I managed to sidestep serious trouble at school because quite academically I did quite well. So I think teachers gave me a bit of leeway, rightly or wrongly. And I stood up to them when there are issues happening at school. So it's always been in my blood to sort of not stand by if I see injustices taking place. But when I was in my early 20s, I was working in the grocery sector. And a couple of times I was working with my clients and the supermarkets came in to do audits. And I was in those meetings and I would just listen to the demands that were made by the supermarket, the restrictions that they put in place, the way they took away the individuality and creativity of many of these companies, and the financial pressure they put on them to meet their demands and be exactly what they needed it to be because they were pushing this route to market. Everything went through the supermarkets. We now see the issue there. It means the power and control that these guys have is phenomenal. But at the time, I was very young and early 20s, and I was like, oh, this doesn't seem right. And I started digging. Digging back then was and researching was very, very different. I didn't have the internet. It was very much, practical feet on the ground type research and going and speaking to lots of different people and so forth. And over the years, I sort of grew in confidence a bit. And eventually, when I was on my own with the three children, my children, I decided to go freelance so that I could put myself where I wanted to be to find out more in detail, plus work around the kids. So, excuse me. I then went and started working in different areas of agriculture, speaking to various growers, farmers, producers. I, tapped into big feed, big seed, big chem, and all the rest of it, and just managed to have my ear on the ground a little more and get to speak to some of these guys directly. And my fears were proven to be correct. And
Yeah,
obviously, in
no,
that meantime,
it's terrible how the supermarkets did come in and take over agriculture like nothing on earth. And I've said this story before on this podcast, but for anybody that hasn't heard it, I'll say it again. When a very famous now supermarket that was a clothes retailer came into the food chain. I'm from a growing family, and my brother put a consortium together of young farmers to supply this shop, and he was supplying lettuces, and a class A1 lettuce went up from 4 ounces to 8 ounces in a very short period of time. And that takes a lot of chemicals. And I used to watch my brother walking down the fields, spraying away, and, with no t-shirt on in the summer. And the skin is the largest organ of the body, and there were no regulations, there was nothing. But now you see, kind of pictures on social media of farmers in hammer suits going down and spraying it, and yet we're expected to eat that. And so your journey out on the land talking to these farmers, my brother was dead 2 years later, as was everybody in the consortium. What was your what knowledge did you find out? Did you see young farmers dying? Did you?
No, it wasn't so much that that I saw. It was the way the market, the entire food production industry was being manipulated by very few. Once again, it's the same story throughout. This is nothing new. Back then, it just happened to be that I was in the food and farming, and that's what resonated with me. And as I went on this journey, I realized there are so many different holes. It isn't just what we're spraying on the food, as you know. It isn't just what we're spraying on the food. It's the care for the animal. It's what we're putting in the ground. It's what we end up eating on our plate. And to me, this monopolization of our food production is an incredibly dangerous position for us as the people to be in. Like every area in our life, the control we've given away whilst under kind of military grade attack, psychological attack, we have given our power away. And we'll come to more of what we're doing shortly. But this movement is very much about returning that power back to the people, back to the communities. It's such an important part of this process that we're now going through. But during those years, it gave me, what it's like. You go down one rabbit hole, it very quickly leads to another. So over the
There's
years,
a whole
through my
Warren
20s,
underground,
oh
isn't
my
there?
goodness me, my 20s were just, completely honed in on this stuff. And then in my 30s, I had the confidence to start finding out more and put myself in a position where I could learn more. And then in my 40s, I actually, my first couple of years, my 40s, I took a couple of years off. The first time in literally decades, I took a couple of years off. And then just before COVID hit, I'd started to get back into the ring of things on more the political side. And COVID hit. And within a month or so, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. So, yeah, that's a very brief kind of overview of how I reached this point.
Now, it's very interesting that you said, yep, this is what we've been waiting for. Can you expand further on that? Because a lot of people will be going, what the fuck's she saying? We're not waiting for this. But the system was so corrupt and so broken that something major had to happen. Do you agree?
Agreed, 100%. There was a very, very, very minute portion of us, relatively speaking, awake for the years and years before we hit the pandemic. So, for those of us who've been trying to wake people up for many years, I think a lot of others now will understand how that could be a frustration, how that could be difficult, because we didn't have something like a pandemic, which would trigger so many people to start looking a little deeper, start asking certain questions. And what we've seen in the last couple of years has been just an awakening like no other I've ever experienced. It's been, it's been hard those years prior to the pandemic if you were awake because you're a part of society that you're not part of. I know a lot of people now will fully understand what it's like, trying to spend your time with others who are fast asleep. And you're talking about things that you don't care about, you don't give a monkey's about, because you're looking at a far bigger picture all the time. And it's a feeling of huge responsibility. And also, I try and take it as I was given this task somehow. And I was woken up and went through all the things that I went through as a single parent, even with 3 kids. None of it's easy. Like everyone's got things they need to deal with. But the path I was put on, I believe, was to bring me to this point, because now I've had time to think about all this. I've had time to put ideas together. I've had time to think of really practical solutions. I've had time to ask myself a lot of the philosophical questions that go with this as well, as to what are our human rights? What are, our inalienable rights? What should we do? How should we behave? Do we react with violence? Do we bring in solutions? And so for me, the solutions were going to always be community based. It was always going to be about returning power back to the people, because the problem was centralization of power. So the absolute result is to decentralize that power. And so it was being able to think of models that could work, that would help with that.
That's brilliant. So I'm now going to introduce our audience to how I met you this year and the extraordinary work you are doing. Katherine has founded something called the People's Health Alliance. So this is I don't know how you have done this, but literally it seemed overnight you managed to completely flood Telegram and bring together thousands, absolute thousands of natural health practitioners to do to set up a new health system called the People's Health Alliance with a more natural way of healing. And you've got doctors, you've got nurses. I'm a EFT matrix reimprint practitioner. You've got homeopaths, osteopaths. You've just brought people in their droves. And this was meant to be in the UK. And then very quickly it went globally. I'm on the Canadian group. I don't know why I'm on the Canadian group as well. I am on so many different groups. And I have to say, for me, it's very overwhelming, the sheer amount of messages that come through every day. And I'm just on, kind of maybe 10 groups. But how did you do this? How could you possibly envisage getting a health system, a natural health system together with such power and such force so quickly?
Um, well, I mean, it's not all down to me at all. I just had the vision. It took a few really solid, incredible, wonderful volunteer friends who just stepped in. They saw my vision, they understood what I was trying to do here, and they were behind it 100%. And very, very swiftly, it was really, I used to have a big Twitter account. They've now removed me. I'm on about my 50,000th account. But back then I had quite a big following. And so I put a shout out about anyone who'd be interested in getting involved, and be it allopathic, be it holistic practitioners. And we ended up with 10,000 people in 1 week.
Wow.
So we suddenly had to bring in systems really swiftly, because I thought maybe we'll get 100 people. We suddenly had to bring in systems really quickly to try and manage that. And we did good stuff. We made mistakes. We learned a lot. We weren't remotely prepared. But actually, this was on the back of the fact that the government had announced these potential mandates for the NHS staff. And I thought, right, you can see I've watched the NHS for years. I've always been a huge proponent. They've saved my life twice. I'd always been a big fan. My mum was a nurse for 35 years. But I could see where this was going, and I could see what I believe it was intentional. And so I think other people felt that energy. They understood that actually this is getting a little bit serious now, guys. So I don't actually know how we've done it, which is bizarre, because we go day to day to day to day. A lot of people say, oh, what's your plans for 6 months, 12 months? We can give you a vague idea of what we'd like to see happen. But in all honesty, this is something that's never been approached before. This is a people-led, volunteer-based organization initiative that is truly for the people, and it is about returning power, but it's also about bringing all those natural holistic practitioners into the light when they've been kept in the shadows by the powers that be for so many years. But what some of these guys and girls can do is just incredible. And in all honesty, if we had a feeling, hoping we were very, very wrong, that the majority of NHS staff would take the Uji flip, the injection. And as a result, we're now getting reports in that this is having now a really, really, derogatory effect on the services of the NHS.
Mm.
And so we were right that it was something to be a little concerned about. So what we decided to do was get on and build these hubs and bringing all these practitioners. And like I say, some of it we've got really good, some of it we've got really wrong. And that's fine. I mean, it's organic, and we move as we move. But the response we've had has been profound. It's still a case on a lot of our hub groups, of which there's nearly, I think, 150 now in the UK, which is,
Wow.
again, in 4 months since we launched, is just incredible. But the amazing news is we've got several hubs now lined up over the coming weeks. Literally, one in the next couple of weeks kicks off with opening their doors. Health hubs are actually opening already, which none of
That
us could ever
is
dream.
extraordinary. So I just want to explain to the audience what a health hub is. It will be a physical building, won't it, Catherine? It'll be
For the
somewhere.
majority. Some
Yeah.
people are finding buses, some people are doing mobile bus services for now, whilst they're sourcing or setting up their property, their building, because actually they understand that getting their health care out support out there now is imperative. And so a couple have got buses that they're going around on a regular route. They'll be stopping in the community so people can at least get checkups, at least get that first line of care support. And they're working on the buildings whilst they're doing that.
It's just extraordinary. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And I think the WHO have even admitted themselves that, I can't remember the figure now, but it'll be something like natural health by the year 2023 will be a $20 billion industry. There has never been a moment in the history of mankind or since allopathic medicine was put into the system. And I think that's kind of very important to make it clear that it was put into the system. Uh, but I don't think there's ever been a time that people have wanted to find more natural ways to heal like this ever before. And it's an extraordinary movement that you have started. And I'm just so grateful to be part of it and, to have you here and be with all my health hub people. I've had them over to my home, or, one of my groups have come over to my home for a cup of tea and nibbles so we can kind of talk about things. I know I need to find more time.
Yeah, same as
But
all of us, love.
I I know, but it is starting, and that's why it was so important for me to have you on the podcast. Quite early on, I've only been going a couple of months, but I wanted to put you out there so people know that there is going to be an alternative, that something wonderful is happening, and you know we've got this. You will be able to find alternatives. I don't know whether you know, Catherine, but I was deplatformed off TikTok and I lost 44,000 followers for only speaking about natural health, the health benefits of a horseradish, stinging nettles, breath work, little posts like, if you cut yourself, how to heal a cut,
Yeah.
suck on it, the saliva, how to heal a burn with lavender, because lavender, there's a lot of research on this, but you're not allowed to put this information out anymore. So it will be really reassuring for people listening to this podcast to know that this is happening and it's going global.
Yes, yes, shockingly. We'd always hoped that at some point in the future we'd be able to roll out the blueprint for the health hubs and what we're about, our ethos, our principles, globally, because, why not? This is always going to be free in terms of what we could offer at core. It was always going to be that we would get this blueprint out and allow everyone to share it if they so wished. But I did an interview with Pam Gregory,
Yep.
and we'd had about 3 countries up until that point had somehow heard of us and been in contact. And we're now sitting at 25 who want to take the blueprint and introduce it into their country. And I've got to say, Australia and New Zealand are absolutely flying. I think in Canada have picked up now. I think one of the reasons being that a lot of the staff over there, they refused the vaccine and they were fired. That was it. So you've got a number of staff members out there, trained medical staff members, who haven't got work and aren't too happy and have no plans, quite rightly, of taking the jab. So they're flying along. They're absolutely going for it, which is really encouraging. And so other country, we've got another international couple of meetings next week. We're getting there. There has to be some amendments to things to suit their country, but otherwise they can run with it. The same issue is, though, throughout this movement globally, is not enough people, not enough time, not enough resources to make it happen quickly, to make it happen in an ideal manner. But I keep reminding people we do what we can with what we've got to the best of our ability, because that's all we can do. And I do genuinely believe that as we go ahead through the next 6 months or so, many more people are going to realize that actually they do need to look for an alternative. They do need to find something else, and it will just continue to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, absolutely, it will. And I think just for people listening to this podcast, it's reassuring to know that there is something going on underground. It's not underground, but it go behind the scenes that's not in the mainstream media. Why this is not in the mainstream media, I will never understand.
If I'm
Um,
honest about it, if they came looking for interviews, they'll be shown the door immediately.
yes, I know you will. But people need to know this information, and there's a lot of people kind of, I'm back up and running on TikTok, built my account again. But a lot of people kind of go, where is the clinical trials on this, the peer reviewed trials? And the thing is, with with this kind of healing, there aren't any. But then find a doctor who hasn't got a ton of happy patients. I interviewed Dr. Sarah Myhill, who has been taken to court by the British Medical Council more times than any other doctor, 38 times. And she was investigated all those times because they said she could not be looking after her patients because she prescribed so few drugs. And she said, but I don't need to prescribe the drugs because I teach them how to heal. And this is the wonderful thing for me as a tapper and a breathwork coach, is that we have these extraordinary abilities in our body to heal ourselves. And they don't tell you because there's no money in healthy people.
No,
So
and I think, I've been speaking to a number of GPs, and what I'm hearing is that actually during their training, they're taught to take a more holistic approach. Traditionally, they've been taught to take a more holistic approach. You don't need to find a pill for every ill. You can find other solutions through common sense, good nutrition, exercise, gut health. Excuse me, a number of different things, but your doctor gets your 5 minutes to focus in on that one thing that's bothering you, and it's a stick a plaster on it approach. What all of these other practitioners do, it's very much that whole healing approach. They're looking at the whole body, looking at the whole picture, because Philly, something you could be saying is an issue here is actually caused by something else, and that you need to get to the root of. So whilst I am a little, teed off with the allopathic world in terms of what we've seen over the last couple of years, this is fundamentally an institutional issue that has been led and dictated by just so few, be it from the pharmaceutical industry or others thereof. So, we need to see change come. And one of the ways we can do that is by leading by example. And that's how we want to conduct ourselves here. They're going to come for the allopathic practitioner, for the holistic practitioners, if things pan out. I don't think they'll have time now. I think things are looking very good for us. But should that happen, actually being a part of PHA means we can close ranks together. You are not alone as a holistic practitioner anymore. We're not one of the regulatory bodies who are going to bow down to government demands. It's not how we work. We're going to close ranks and get behind you, and we, the people, will be getting behind you. And there's strength in numbers, and we will keep firing ahead, irrelevant of what governments say. Because also with the NHS, with the way it is, we've got a moral obligation to step in and do what we can to help those that are suffering, and we can't allow something as ridiculous as government to stand in our way. Our education system, do not even get me on that platform.
No, let's get you on there.
I despise our education system with a passion. Children are being geared to move in certain directions. There's no room for creativity. There's no room for natural talent. There's no room for individualism, and not one size fits all. Yet our children are forced into systems that mean there's one system that's supposed to fit all. And for those that don't comply, we're going to pop you on medication because there's obviously something wrong with you.
You have also founded, and I've been lucky enough to be at some of the Zoom meetings. I left the last one because you said this is only for farmers, so I presumed you didn't want me there. But now you've started the People's Food and Farming Alliance, which is extraordinary. And I just want to say here that, for those of you that might be new to natural health or holistic healing, we are very much governed by what's in our soil. And if there's no nutrients in our soil, there's no nutrients in our food, and there's no nutrients in our body. And, 80% of disease begins in the gut. We've known that for thousands of years. Western medicine is just about catching up. So please tell us about the People's Food and Farming Alliance.
Well, I mean, it was inevitable. I was always going to do this after the
Yeah.
years I spent working in this and the passion I have for it. It was inevitable, but the health thing was right in front of me. So it was like, right, let's deal with this first. But again, I wasn't planning on starting PFFA just yet, but due to actions by government, Baker Ag, all the usual players, the hand's been forced slightly. So we're looking to launch in September. We're not sure when yet, probably towards the tail end of September, because again, everything we do is, bar me pretty much, is volunteer based. So you have to understand, everyone has to understand that this is being done organically, led by the people, led by volunteers who have lives and bills to pay and families and everything else. So it's really exciting. So what we're doing is we're going to be approaching this in a kind of three-pronged attack, if you like. The fundamental aim is to obviously bring food sovereignty, bring back health to people through their food, really heal the land, heal that soil whilst we're at
Yeah.
it, and also ensure that we educate people as to why eating seasonally is very, very important, and why eating organically is very, very important, and how we can bring those models back to community in a way that's affordable and accessible for everyone. So it is going to be all hands on deck, I think, and I don't think that will hurt any of us. So the first section we're focusing in on is grow your own. Lots and lots of people do, and it's absolutely fantastic, but we want to be able to inspire and educate and motivate and help people understand why actually they really probably should be doing that, and how they can look at growing for 12 months through the year rather than just kind of that spring summer season that we have a tendency to do because of our weather and everything else. But there's still plenty we can do in other months. We're also going to be looking at community growing groups, food production groups, so that there's a number of them out there and doing fantastic work, but there's many areas whereby this could be done. So we're giving advice on how to do that, what to think about, what do you grow, when do you grow it, how do you do a poultry, how do you look at livestock, things like that. Funding. What I am genuinely believing right now is that council land is public land. If we get to the stage where there are food shortages and people need to be fed, I'm afraid rules and regulations outside of those that are common, basic, decent, moralistic ways to live need to be flung out the window, because we can't just be worrying about, bureaucracy, red tape, etc. when there's people without food. Don't work.
No.
So we need to actually reassess how we view this. And I will happily go to my local council and demand land, and I'll explain what I'm doing. And if they say they won't give it, and there's no clear picture to me as to why they wouldn't, if they've got a good reason, they've got a good reason. If they haven't, I'm just going to go and do it anyway. I am, because I'm not going to stand by and watch people go without if that can be avoided. And I think some of us can start considering being like that if it gets that bad. We've got to open
Mm.
up here.
Yeah, I mean, in America, I think it was about 4 years ago, they introduced the fact, some bizarre law in some of the states that you couldn't grow food in your front garden, and the movement Grow Food, Not Lawns was
Born.
founded, which I've been a big supporter of since day one, along with supporting March Against Monsanto. And, this has been very much set in place to stop people being self-sufficient.
In some states, you can't harvest your own rainwater.
I know somebody commented
Bonkers.
on one of my TikToks on that the other day, because I did a post. I built a rainwater shower in my garden. So
Right.
when we had a heat wave this summer,
Brilliant.
I'm in my rainwater shower. I just said it's a water butt dug in the ground, a bit of copper piping and a pump. Um, and a lot of people, I was really shocked that on TikTok, so many people said we're not allowed to harvest our rainwater. I'm going, of course you are. And they're going, no. Why? Why?
But there has to come a time, surely, when we all just go, no.
Yes.
No, we're going to apply some common sense here, Mr. Authority. But the joy of coming together in your community is if that somebody from authority does come along and say to you, right, remove these vegetables from your front garden, please. The rest of the community can come round and say, no, no, we're
We're
not
not
going to
doing
do it.
this.
And you
No.
don't get to dictate this anymore. I'm sorry. We're done with your
Yeah,
world. We're done
we're
with the way
done.
you want us to live. We're going to, stand in our own power, and we're not hurting anyone. That's the key thing here. We're being lawful,
Yeah.
but we're gonna abide by our own common sense. Thanks ever so much.
I find it I've done a TikTok on this, but I find it extraordinary. I went into a supermarket and I filmed all the weed killer packets, and they are all covered in dandelions and
Yeah,
stinging nettles, which are two of the biggest hitters for your health. I say this every time I mention stinging nettles. If stinging nettles didn't sting, herbivores would have wiped them off the face of the planet. They are that good for you. So
You can cook with them, you can do
yep.
wonderful things with them. Just try and stay away from roadside and where it could have been polluted, and try and get it the ones a little bit up higher. So if dogs have weed on it, other than that, go for it. Just go and pick them and get them back. And there's you can make a number of homemade herbal remedies at home with them. You can make soups with them, sit them in stews. The health benefits from stinging nettles
But
is just,
great in bone broth as well. If you put them
yeah,
when you're making
anything
bone
like that.
broth,
Yeah.
bit of dandelion, bit of stinging nettle is fantastic. So living in a flat, Catherine, with no balcony, what have you managed to grow in your flat? What have you got there?
So I've never had a flat, but if I did, I would certainly go in with the herbs first and foremost, and every single windowsill would be filled with something, something manageable, size manageable. But I'd go for the most nutritious thing I could find to fill that space. So for some, that will be the herbs. For other people, it'll be maybe things that their children will eat, like tomatoes or cucumbers and things like that. Because anything you can grow up, you want to go for. You want to get that going. But if you've got a balcony, wow, you know, you can grow a substantial amount. But I've done before and after pictures of small gardens I've had in the past and shown all the different products that I've managed to get in there. I think we had a really, really small garden. It was like 20 foot by 8 foot. I think it was really small, and I think we've got 32 different items growing within that,
Wow.
through various planting, using different levels on the fencing. You know, we had baskets hanging off the side for some of our fruits, and the food underneath it, just lots and lots of different ways.
You can put herbs in everything, absolutely everything. Even in puddings, they taste
Yeah.
very nice. Just try mixing them up. They are just such a big hitter of antioxidants. I've got a wonderful book called The Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. I don't know if you know it.
Oh,
So,
I don't know if I've got that one.
oh my God, it is fantastic book, and it's kind of my Bible. It's falling to bits, but the health benefits are very often the same. When you look at every plant in there, it's boost the immune system. It's and I just find it very strange that in the year of 2020, we were never told any of the benefits that these amazing plants had. And I did a live yesterday with the great Sally Beck, journalist,
Yeah.
and she was saying that, in 2020, she was a mainstream media journalist and she was kind of putting in proposals to all the mainstream newspapers that she'd worked for 20 years, going, why don't I do an article on the immune system? Why don't I talk about vitamin D? And there was just a wall of silence.
It's
Shocking.
madness. Yeah, it is. It is. But they've known for years. They've known for years. What we've done now, though, is we've reached a point in human history where they can't win anymore. And, you know, it is our time. And we just need to plant our feet in the ground. As long as we remain lawful, we plant our feet in the ground and we do what we need to do, because actually we've got the side of morality. We've got the side of fairness and equity and kindness. They've got none of this. We know we're right. We know we're doing the right thing. And we're not going to stop this time. We're not going to allow that to happen. But like I've said, we do need to look at this as a whole of society, because even coming down to the food, why do people go to the supermarket? Well, it's quick, it's easy, it's in one place, it's pretty well priced, you know, everything's there. Quick, 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 quick. The reason we do that is because as a society, our time is so filled with work commitments and social commitments and all of the other things that have been deemed so very important and should take priority in our life. How many mums really get the time and have the energy to cook from scratch every single day?
My youngest daughter said to me recently, which I thought was really sad. She said, I know that whatever I do, Mum, I can't change what's going to happen. And it's like, yes, you can. You so can. If each one of us just goes, no, we're not buying food that isn't in season in our own country. And also, when you're eating things in season, it's because your body needs those nutrients at that time.
Absolutely.
Stinging nettles come through in the early spring because of allergies, and they're great for allergies. Root vegetables, come through in winter because you're meant to be huddled underground and cozy. You're not meant to be doing a fucking detox fast in January on lettuce. You're just not, are you?
You're, you're so right. You're so right. I agree with you 100%.
You're meant,
It's bonkers.
yeah.
But everyone can do something. We need more people constantly on the PFFA side, on the PHA side. Quite often within the group, we say we've got 150 health hub groups, and so many are doing so well. But for some, it is just a very small skeleton of of people who are making that happen. So there's always the need for backup, support, encouragement, funding. We've got our Power of the Pound campaign, which I would love everybody to kindly go and have a look at on our website. It's asking everyone to kindly donate £1 a month to PHA, because what we're doing with that money, basically, with autumn winter coming, we know through freedom of information requests and various other obvious things that the ambulance system, the NHS acute care system, is really struggling. We know that a lot of that is due to this situation, be it the injuries or albeit the staff not being available. And as such, what we're doing is utilising the money from the Power of the Pound campaign to get people within their community for their health hub trained up in advanced first aid, plus buying a good selection of first aid equipment, emergency care equipment for those volunteers that have been trained to be able to respond within their community should someone have a serious issues and 999 can't, the ambulances can't get to them for hours, they haven't got access to A&E maybe turn them away. I don't know what that might look like, but always we suggest go to 999 first. However, if people are going to be suffering in their communities and there's something we can do to alleviate that pressure, or even just be with the families, then that's what we need to do. We have a moral obligation to do this. And the Power of the Pound campaign, we've got the first lot of payment going out in a couple of weeks to the first hub, whereby they've already got themselves trained up in advanced first aid, and we're going to get the equipment to them. And we've got enough money for a few thereafter. But in all honesty, everyone needs to get behind this. Imagine if we had 1 million people give £1 a month.
One day we can
Yeah.
do this,
Yeah. We've
it's
only
the
just
power.
started. This is just the beginning.
And what you've achieved in 3 months, I am in awe of, Catherine. It is just extraordinary to me. And I just like to say, on behalf of myself and many, many people that are listening to this podcast today, thank you. Thank you for people like you who are stepping up now, when never has there been a time in history more important for people to step up. And it's a really hard thing to do. It's a lonely place stepping out of the mold, isn't it?
It is. But I think the
But
last
when
25
you've
years being ostracized from society for being, that conspiracy theorist, um, it's given me pretty thick skin. So putting my head above the parapet, I always knew it was going to come, and I didn't really want to, if I'm honest, but I knew that someone had to. But I just want to say, none of this would have happened without the incredible people working alongside me. Genuinely, I get to work with some of the most amazing people, and I adore them. And it's really been a huge team effort. And yeah, they're just wonderful.
Oh, it has just been a joy to have you here. So I just want to say to everybody, go and find the People's Health Alliance, the People's Food and Farming Alliance. I will have details up of them on my webpage. So come and find me, www.phillyjlay.com. And I will kind of update in my newsletters what's happening. So every month you get a newsletter, and I will give them a mention, along with all the extraordinary people that are working so hard to change this paradigm in which we live. And on a final note, Catherine, can you give everybody some hope for the future? Just fill everybody with hope, because I know that you have so much hope to give. So we'd just love you to share it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the best part of doing all this is what comes out the other side, because what we're seeing now is a huge paradigm shift, and no one ever could have thought it would be easy, and it's not. And that's the reality. And I think it will look a bit dark yet before it looks light. But what's on the other side is fantastic. And you've got so many groups now coming forward to change the infrastructure from the ground up. At community level, and it's education, it's law, it's the police, it's so many different areas where economically people are bringing new ideas, new organizations, but that are very much focused on returning power to the people. It's back to us and our individual needs as well as our community needs. So got to go through the loop a little bit, because we do. What's on the other side is just going to be tremendous, and I'm so excited. But we do have to go through this stage to come out the other side, because there's a lot of people we need to sort of pick up and take with us along the way.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to say, if there's kind of a couple of little things that you could do at home just to make a difference to the next generation, is, get your kids planting or growing, if you possibly can, real organic food. But if you can't do that, just what I used to do with my kids, and I think why they eat so many vegetables now when none of their friends do, is and we didn't have a garden when they were little. Well, we didn't grow well, I did. I tried to grow food, but I was on a flight path from London. It was just all dead. But what we do is on a Saturday, when I talk about the block cooking I do on a Sunday, on the Saturday, we used to do something called Saturday lunch, where from the moment that they could hold a knife and fork, they did this. So we sat at the kitchen table and I brought out all the ingredients and I would bring out all the herbs and spices and, soy sauce or, chilies and everything. And I go, okay, let's blend these and just keep putting our hand in and tasting until we like the taste of it. Obviously not the raw meat, but all the kind of the guac and making kind of a Mediterranean salad with kind of cucumber, onion, and tomatoes, and they just have spoons, and I just go, what does it need? What does it need? And if you get children to actually get their hands in the soil and pick the food, there is a lot of research that they will more likely eat it.
Yeah.
So you might go, I've got a fussy eater. Start them young, sit them at that
Yes.
table, mash up an avocado. I know that's got some air miles, but it's one of the few things I do actually have with air miles, but I have tried to grow them endlessly and I can't. But just do find some food that you can mash up with your children, make some hummus, kind of,
Yeah.
and then go, should we roast some peppers and put in it? Just bring the children back in to,
It's making the witch's brew in a
yes,
way that is actually quite productive, you know?
yes. And then they'll eat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They will. Yeah. Go for it. Get the kids involved at every level.
absolutely. And go to your school, go along to your local school and say, can I come in and sit down and do flavor testing with the
So
children? Can we
wonderful.
mix herbs? I mean, I did that at my kids' school and started a little garden, and there was no land for a garden. And I took an alley, and the headmistress said, that isn't a garden. I went, it's a start.
Yeah.
Uh, and
That's
I
it.
took the alley
Do
down
what
the
you
side of the
can.
building.
Do what you can with what you've got to the best of your ability, because that's all any of us can do. And if you can go to bed at night and know you've done that, you've done well. You've done what you can.
Absolutely. And each one of us is enough. Everything we're doing
Yes,
is enough. So,
absolutely.
Katherine MacBean, it has been a complete and utter joy to have you here
Thank you
today.
so
Thank you
much for having me. It's
so,
been great.
so much. And I hope you'll come back and
Yes.
talk to us again
Yep.
a little bit further down the line. Let us know where we're at and
Absolutely.
how we're growing, because this is a really exciting journey. So, really bless you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. It's great.
Thank you. Goodbye.